to see everybody. I am thrilled that you are joining us today. If I didn't already introduce myself, and I don't think I did, I am Josh Starr. I am the CEO of PDK International, which is the parents organization for Educators Rising. And we are thrilled today to be able to share with you what we've been doing with Educators Rising, and particularly how we are working with some fabulous leaders in the state of Connecticut to not only address the teaching shortage, but also increase teacher diversity in a state that I was very proud and privileged to be a superintendent in a few years back in Stamford, Connecticut. So I'm going to go through, I'm just going to kind of frame the issue a little bit, share some data, and then I'm going to engage Shawana Tucker and Sandy Frioli in a conversation about sort of the practical aspects of how to get started with Educators Rising. And again, please be on mute. We are recording this. We have all of your submitted questions in a spreadsheet. We'll be getting them out to folks. If you have other questions, type them in the chat, and we will get to them. And let me see if I can get to the chat. Okay, so let's get started. This is us today. That's me. That's Shawana, who's in the Chief Talent Officer in Connecticut Department of Education, and then Sandy Frioli, who's lead teacher in New Britain and has been doing fabulous work, not only in New Britain, but now in the state. So I always try to start conversations about thinking about like what's the problem we're trying to solve, and I want to share with you a little data, and then I also want to kind of put out questions a little bit. So we know that because of baby boomer retirements, as well as attrition, particularly attrition in urban areas, that there's a need to hire about 120,000 teachers nationally. And many of you have seen this at the local level. We know they're particularly in shortage areas, like special education, ELL, some of the sciences. We know some of the numbers, but we also don't think enough about some of the costs associated with replacing a teacher. About $10,000 in a rural or suburban area, about $21,000 in an urban area. When I was superintendent in Montgomery County, Maryland, calculated that we spent about $39,000 to support our teachers over the first 5 years, right? That's a real sunk cost if people leave. So we know we have to not only attract people, we have to retain them into the profession. And we also know that there's been a precipitous drop in teacher preparation enrollment nationally. 35% nationally, and I think it's about 43% in Connecticut. There's been an emerging body of research that clearly shows that there is a direct link between students of color experiencing success and the benefit that they have from having a teacher that looks like them in their classroom. There's been emerging data on that. We actually did a great webinar on that with Dan Goldhaber and Travis Bristol a few months ago. It's just been this emerging body of research that's really important. You can see this is from Dan Goldhaber's work. If you go on to capitonline.org, you can find these. You can see the results right there, right? Reduces the probability of dropping out for Black students, increases their intent to pursue a 4-year university degree by 29%, right? And I also want to be clear, right, that like having a well-qualified teacher of color in front of students is really good for our students. And it doesn't mean that all the white teachers we have aren't fabulous also, right? It just means that we have to make sure that our schools, our teaching workforce looks like our community. So you can see what the data are there. Most teachers in America, and it's been this way forever, are white women. And 52% of our kids are kids of color. 52% of our kids are kids of color as well. We're really proud of that. We're really proud of the work that we do to try to get kids from within their own communities to serve their communities. And we're seeing some great success there. We also know that about 60% of teachers teach within 20 miles from where they attended high school. So as we think about addressing the teacher shortage, we really have to think about a local comprehensive strategy. And that's what Shawana and Sandy have been leading in Connecticut, and we're so excited to share with you all. So we really believe that like there is no one way of doing business with Educators Rising, but that if it's important enough to you, you can make it happen and you can start small. We're going to share with you today how we how Connecticut is going about it. But I also think that there's a challenge we have when we're attracting the next generation of kids into education, or young people, I should say, into the profession. We find with our students in Educators Rising nationally, about half of them are kids who just always wanted to be teachers. It may be that they had a brother or sister who had special needs. It may be that they had they were really inspired by a teacher they saw. They've always wanted to be a teacher, and we have a bunch of kids that feel that way. But then we also have a number of kids who are social activists. They believe, much like the way that I got into public education, they believe it's the cornerstone of democracy. They believe in social justice and equity, and they realize that education is sort of the key to everything else in the world. And so we find a real mix. And when we're thinking about the teacher shortage and framing it, what we're finding is that by attending to both of those groups of students, we're seeing some success. Right? That the kid who may not be thinking about education, but when they're tapped on the shoulder by an inspiring adult, by a mentor, says, hey, have you ever thought about this? They may come along for the ride. And that's what we're really trying to do at Educators Rising. So let's talk about how to activate your community to grow your own. And this is where I'm going to turn it to, we're going to engage Shwana and Sandy. So you guys are the only two other people who are allowed to not be on mute. And I hope everyone can see them. So the first question I have for you both is, why have a grow your own strategy for a more diverse workforce? Like, what is it, why is it important to you in Connecticut to have a grow your own strategy?
For us in Connecticut, Josh and others, and welcome, it's very important for us because we look at our data. And what the data is showing us is that over the past 10 years, we're trending downward in our numbers of minorities that are entering the field of education. And our numbers have decreased. They're starting to increase a little bit, but we took a really big hit and a dip for students who were actually entering our EPP programs. So we realized 5-7 years ago that something had to be done, or we had to do business a little differently. And so one of the things that we have focused on over, excuse me, the past 5 years has been to diversify our teacher workforce. We've also noticed the demographic change within our state, within our student population. And that continues to change and change rather rapidly, and especially in our urban areas and now overflowing into many of our suburban areas. So we have some districts that are at about 93% minority, while we have others that are approaching 35-40%. So we've seen an increase in our student demographics as well.
So let me just follow up a little bit. Why is this the role of the State Department or a school district? Isn't this something that should be teacher prep programs in higher ed? Why do it from your vantage point in the State Department?
We have full-blown support from our governor, who is vested in diversifying the educator pipeline. He believes in it, and he feels that our students need to have more people that look like them, teaching them, leading them, mentoring them, and modeling with them, as well as our Commissioner of Education. And so our board adopted a plan 5 years ago, focusing on diversification strategies for our educator pipeline here in Connecticut. So it is a priority at the state level.
I believe it's also important that we start early, and the focus can't be by the time they're ready to enter a teacher prep program. It has to start early. We start in high school, and we're even starting in middle school, putting that notion for those kids that they can do it and be successful is really our goal.
That's fabulous. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm also just dealing with a technical issue we're having on our side. What about this question of diversity, right? Like, first of all, why is it so important to you all in Connecticut? And how is Ed Rising helping with that?
Well, I think it's, oh, go ahead,
Sandy.
Shawana.
Go ahead, Sandy.
No, I think I mean, our kids need to have people that look like them. And really, it's important to have the teacher who is going to make that difference. You know, I was born and raised in New Britain, went through New Britain public schools, went to a local university. I grew up in an apartment in New Britain. So I have every connection with them. You know, I'm definitely one that works within 20 miles of where I grew up. But the key is that they can relate. The only thing is I'm not a different color. I look like all those white teachers that they have. So I think it's really important that they have models in front of them that they can relate to. And that includes every nationality out there.
But so I'm just going to push a little bit on that, Sandy, because one thing we've seen from the experience in New Britain also is that you can still be successful doing Educators Rising by having a teacher like you engaging the kinds of kids in New Britain who don't look like you, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? You sort of alluded to it, like you're from New Britain, you know everybody, but it's like to talk about how you've been able to reach your kids and how you've been able to engage them.
Well, I feel that well, as a role model, as a teacher, they see the passion that I have for them. And I believe that it's so important to be able to make those connections with the kids. And when they can see that this is something that could be a fulfilling career for them and that somebody believes in them, they can be successful and they believe in themselves. And I think that's critically important.
Absolutely, and that was a perfect segue to my next question. So and I want to make sure I have the right slide up. So how did you all get started? Oh, wait, let me. So why is it important to start in high school? And tell us about how you got started in New Britain.
Sure, I'll be happy to tell you how we got started in New Britain and also why it's important to start in high school and before. During my time in New Britain, I served as Chief Talent Officer for the school district. And I was fortunate enough to attend a conference in Washington, D.C. with about 2 or 3 other persons, one from the state, one from a university, and one from another school district here. And it was on diversifying the educator workforce. And there were representatives there from a variety of states, and people were reporting out on various initiatives that they had implemented. There was a gentleman there representing Ed Rising and did a panel discussion and a workshop on the actual program. Well, it really perked my interest. I came back to New Britain with some information. I did some research on the program, got further information on pricing, et cetera. And I really thought that the program would be a good fit because I saw it as really like the total package that could be offered. I had exposure with Yes Clubs and Future Teachers and other programs, but Ed Rising was different because it had everything that we needed in one program. And I thought that it would be easy for me to relate this to my teachers when having an ask for them to implement this type of program. But to take a step back, one of the things that you have to have is you have to have investment in this type of a program and on people really understanding, meaning your key stakeholders, the need for this type of program. And I mean on all levels. So it starts with at that time, your superintendent has to be vested and totally invested in wanting to diversify the educator pipeline, number one, but understanding the need as to why to have a program, a grow your own model within the district, within the high school, and even possibly at the middle school level. Your board needs to be informed. Your community partners need to be informed and really have a clear understanding. So for us, when this program finally bloomed in New Britain, and it did not take me long to do that, we started not only at the high school, but we also developed, excuse me, an after-school program at our middle school for Ed Rising. We had a pre-K through 8 middle school, and we implemented an after-school Ed Rising club there for targeting 7th and 8th graders. And the goal of that program was threefold. It was for those students to really learn about the field of education. Secondly, they were able to work within their own school with students in grades K through 2 on certain days and assist them with reading and other assignments, kind of like a teacher's helper. And finally, we felt that it would be a great way for them to learn about the program and then transition right into the high school, since we only have one high school in which Sandy works, where the program was already established at the high school level. So it would be a smooth alignment and transition from 8th grade right into the high school. You were in the program at DiLoretto, you would then transition right into the program freshman year at the high school. So those were kind of the goals of us really bringing it down to the middle school level, knowing that it would then bloom once they got to the high school level.
And did you see that? Did you see success in that? Did kids in the middle school then go into the high school program?
Yes,
We're
they did.
actually just seeing that. I have students in my classes that said, I was in the middle school program of Ed Rising, and they're so excited to be a part of it at the high school.
What was the pitch? Like, how do you pitch it? I mean, look, I've got a middle schooler, you know, I got a high school, I got a 7th grader. I'm thinking about the pitch I would make to him to try to become a teacher. Like, what's the pitch you make to a middle schooler to consider education as a career?
I think the pitch that was made to the students was, I spent time really looking at the teachers at that K-8 school, and I met with several of them. And I met with those that I knew had a great connection to their students. And because of that, it was they're the reasons why the students were drawn to that after school program. And it was all in how we branded it, how we marketed it to the students, and they came. And I remember speaking to the first cohort, and I think we had about 18 to 20 students that were in the after school club. The first year was a little bumpy because we had to select certain days that we would run the after school program. And once we got all of the logistics worked out, the principal was extremely supportive of the program, along with the 2 teachers who ran the after school club. And so students, excuse me, students joined the after school club. And you have to look at where the students are. We wanted to make sure that our program was not conflicting with the days that they had sports or the days that they had band or other extracurricular activities. So once we were able to finesse that day, it worked very well. We saw the numbers go up, and the students also felt very special in a way that they can then utilize some of the things that they were learning and the hands-on experiences that they were gaining by working with students in their own building who were younger.
Got it. So you kind of address this a little bit, Shwana, and maybe, you know, both Shwana and Sandy can talk about it a little bit. Like, why not just do your own, right? Why not create your own? You all know curriculum work, right? You know, I do this stuff. Why Ed Rising? Why was that a good fit? Why not just create something that was specific to New Britain?
For me, I'll let Sandy answer that, but I'll just say it's the time factor, Josh. Everybody, I think, is stretched in 10 different directions, and many of us are doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people. And so when you find a program that has the curriculum, that has the total package, as we called it, that was also aligned with the goals of the district, that had a component focusing on cultural competency, social justice, we were like, wow, it's the one-stop shop that we need. So we don't have to go out and really do a whole lot of extra.
Got it.
And all the resources are there, you know, between the videos, the links, the lessons, the 1-day, 3-day, 5-day, like there were so many options to be able to fit into really any curriculum or a program at any high school.
Got it. So what about funding, right? People are always concerned about funding. There's limited pots of CTE dollars, Perkins dollars, right? We know it's a battle every year to go to the board and ask for more money. Shwana, you are very convincing in how you were able to get things done. Can you tell a little bit about how you were able to piece together some funds to support this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We actually utilized our own existing internal funding to support this initiative. Specifically, we used Alliance District funds. For those of you who are unaware, in Connecticut, if you are in what is deemed as an underperforming district, there is a pot of money called Alliance funds that the state allocates to those districts. The majority of them are the urban districts, and some are the medium-sized districts. And so within that, you have the flexibility to have funds or to utilize Alliance funds towards supporting diversification initiatives. And so within my line item for that, we had only $20,000, but my superintendent knew, and I knew that I could do a lot with $20,000. So within that line item that was dedicated for minority teacher recruitment and retention, I used those funds for our startup to implement the Ed Rising program. Because I worked in the talent office as the chief talent officer, I also had my own budget. So once we were up and running, we were also able to tap into some of those funds, my funds, that I then allocated towards travel and accommodations when we were able to take 4 of our students to attend and compete at the Ed Rising National Conference in Dallas. We also, I utilized some of those funds when we started our program to purchase a small amount of t-shirts and other items for students so that Sandy could have those to really market the program at the high school on certain days, on club days, when clubs were able to have their tables set up and to gain interest for others to join. So I was able to use those funds internally from HR along with my Alliance funds. And I did not, I stayed within my budget. And so that is how we were able to utilize funding to implement the program and to sustain it and continue it.
So patchwork, right? But there are title dollars that may be eligible for this. Obviously, like every state's going to be a little different. You know, Alliance dollars may be only particular to Connecticut, but but many states have different kinds of initiatives around that. I think it's important that there's some recognition that you can piece together different kinds of funding, and it's not like it's a huge lift either, right? $10,000
Yes.
is not an enormous amount, but that we can piece it together. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but just talk a little bit about recruitment, I guess, Sandy. Like, how did you, were kids already interested? How did you recruit them? Kids who might not have been interested, like what did that process look like?
Well, because we already had an established program, we also have a full operating preschool in our high school. And I think it was the clinical experiences, once they start working with kids or younger kids and they realize how much they enjoy and get from it, it just made a great transition. So from the middle school, they're working, and our high school students work in the preschool, but we have clinical experiences where, like this year, we had 52 kids set to go out into the elementary schools the last hour of the day to work with the elementary schools. So I think because we've provided so many experiences for our kids, they've fallen in love with the profession and kids.
And I'll also add to that, one of the other things that we did with a very small pot of funds, we were able to take some of the students on, I don't want to say a field trip, but they were exposed to various programs on several different college campuses. And we tried to make that connection of what you're learning here in high school, and now how can you apply that at the college level. So I believe we had 2 universities that welcomed us, and our students were able to spend a day on that college campus, meet with professors and other students to help them to make that connection as to what's next.
Yeah, 2 really important pieces of that. Actually, we had heard from some folks in another state that starting the clinical experience early is a great way to get kids engaged, right? That once they get that buzz of working with other kids, it's really, they get really attracted to the profession. The other is, we know some districts have tied Educators Rising into their AVID programs. And because AVID does a lot in terms of college awareness, career pathways, and that they've sort of combined the 2, which, and I'm a huge fan of AVID. So I love it when people are thinking about how to wrap these into multiple initiatives that they have going on. So let's switch to the state work. So Shwana, you moved to the state, right? And tell folks, like, how did you go from the school level program to now the beginning of a statewide initiative? How did that get going?
Sure. Having been Chief Talent Officer in New Britain, having worked with Sandy very closely from beginning to full implementation of the Ed Rising program, which took us really about 3 years, and then being afforded the opportunity to become the Chief Talent Officer at the state, I was able to observe the power within the program from planning to implementation to actually seeing students applying to and being accepted into educator preparation programs. So I was a believer. And once we were contacted and had conversations about potentially bringing Ed Rising to the state of Connecticut, I was full on board with that through the funding that has been provided through a foundation for that to happen, and really took pride and time in carefully selecting the pilot districts, knowing that the program allows for flexibility and that there's not just one way to implement the program. So our pilots are a variety of districts. They represent the entire state from one end to the other. Several of them are large urban districts, while we also have several small to medium suburban districts that are pilots. From the inception, I knew also that we had to have key stakeholders at the table to really understand the program goals, and the long-term benefits, along with understanding why we need continued funding to sustain this program. So as a result of that, I immediately pulled together an advisory board for Ed Rising that meets bi-monthly, in which we then provide them key updates, and they have an opportunity to share with us potential resources and feedback so that we can further the initiative via networking and partnerships. And the advisory board is comprised of a variety of stakeholders. They include a representative from the governor's office. It includes a vice provost from the Connecticut State College and University System, a member of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, a state representative who serves on the education committee. We have representation from both unions in the state, both AFT and CEA, and a couple of other education advocates. All of those persons who share a common goal about diversification within the state. They're familiar with our plan. They believe in the Grow Your Own model. And they can then be champions for the work that we're doing statewide, and they can assist us in telling our story, as well as helping us to identify and find resources to support and sustain the program statewide moving forward in years to come.
So I want to ask Sandy a little bit about that, and then I want to go back to something you said, Shwana. But Sandy, what you've gone from doing a fabulous program in New Britain, working with, partnering with Shwana to do that, and now you've moved to the state to help with that. What are the differences that you've seen, and what are the big sort of issues or issues you've had to face in the state as you've made that transition?
Well, technically I'm only with the state 1 day a week, but it's an incredibly rewarding task. The obstacles we're facing this year obviously is trying to do this during a pandemic. So,
right.
Every district that we are working with is at a different, place in their either clubs, they're trying to incorporate into classes. So it's kind of exciting, just to be at the ground, breaking and bringing this to Connecticut. So I'm excited. I hope to see a huge. I think it's going to happen in time, but during this pandemic, we're just going to take baby steps and not expect, miraculous things from school districts. We really want to see how they can make it work for them.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. And the fact that you are still in a school and understand how what that looks like, while also leading this work at the state level, I think is a great model and a great combination. Last question, and then we're going to go to Q&A, and then wrap up. So you kind of address this a little bit, Shwana, like the political recognition that you're getting, or how you're engaging people. How has that kind of recognition by the governor and some of the press, how has that helped with getting increased interest in the pilot, in the program? Have you seen a result of that? What's been the impact of getting the kind of folks to pay attention to it and amplify the message in the state? What's the impact been for you?
The impact has been great, Josh. The governor is fully supportive of this statewide model as a grow your own model, as is the Commissioner of Education. When we launched this statewide initiative for Ed Rising, we launched it at New Britain High School as our statewide initiative, and the governor was there. He made time to come. He spoke to the need within the state and why this is important, as was the commissioner. He was there. So really, and the news media, the press, so everyone, we really got a lot of publicity as to what is Ed Rising. It's a statewide initiative. These are our goals. This is what we seek to do here with our own grow your own model. So having had that support, Sandy and I can tell you, once we hit the TV stations and the press and people saw it, our emails started blowing up like, hi, I'm interested in this program. I'm in this district. I'd like to learn more. So we've had outreach from various districts, outreach from potential funders, outreach from the higher education community to say, we love this idea. What role can we play and how can we assist? And so one university in particular has really moved very quickly, that already had partnerships with several of the districts, but 3 of our pilot sites, we've been meeting with them. And starting in January, we will be offering college courses through this university, and it's a private university, to 3 of our districts here, our pilot districts here within Connecticut. And to take it a step further, Josh, I'll even back up to when I was in New Britain at the school district level. I think that it's very important that when you start a new program or something like this at the district level, state level, people need to have a very clear understanding of what it is, but you need to keep all stakeholders involved. So at the district level, whenever I had an opportunity to share information beyond my superintendent, of course, she was aware, but with my board members, during a personnel committee meeting, I always updated them and kept them abreast as to what was going on, because the more that they know, knowledge is power, then they can also become champions. When we took our students in New Britain to Dallas to attend the conference, they came back and they presented at a board meeting and talked about the experience, what it meant to them, and their next steps moving into educator prep programs.
Mm-hmm.
And we also spent time cultivating relationships with the community college and the state university, in which many of our students from the high school would attend. So we had numerous meetings with the deans, excuse me, and other institutional partners, so that we could truly ensure the success of our students and that everyone was aware of what we were doing and why we were doing it. So I think it's very, very key that you really keep all those involved in the process. They need to be aware.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to try to address some of the questions that have come up, and Sandy and Shwana might be addressing some as well. Like always, we're not going to be able to get to all of them, and we have tons of questions that have been submitted, but within a very short period of time, we will not only have this recording up there, because I know some people weren't able to get on, and we'll send it out, but we'll also have Q&A so that every question is addressed. So one question came up about demographics, and are we keeping track of kids? What happens after participation, all that. That is something we are working on. Different states have sort of different requirements for that. As you all know, it's not always easy to keep track of kids that have gone through CTE programs or who leave the system in general, particularly if they go to college out of state. But we are absolutely designing a way to track that enrollment right now. Someone asked about how it integrates with districts that have similar programs. We like to think it integrates very well because there's no other curriculum out there like this, and there's no other, no one else has micro-credentials. And so what we're finding is that there are some school systems that may have started their own program and then come to us to help flesh it out. And we always say we want to work with, we don't, if you're already doing something great, go for it, but take a look at our curriculum, take a look at our micro-credentials, our teacher training, our conferences and all that, to say how can this be integrated into a program you may have. Oh, hey, Betty Sternberg, how are you? Betty asked me, Shwana and Sandy, a question about how many districts in the program and how many kids. We have 12 districts. Do we know, Sandy and Shwana, how many kids is that up to now? I mean, they're just in the recruitment process, so we probably don't have a very good number yet, but do we know any enrollment numbers right now?
We currently don't have any enrollment numbers. As Sandy stated, it's been a little challenging for us being in the pandemic. So what we've done for this fall semester, we have really focused on spending time with the advisors within our pilot districts, with the principals, the advisors, and even several of the superintendents, affording them an opportunity to really learn about the program, provide professional development so that they can find which is the best way for me to implement this within my district. Is it the club approach? Is it a full-blown Ed Rising program? And so we're at that phase now where they have kind of figured out the best way to implement this within their district. The other thing that we're faced with right now, due to the pandemic, we have districts that are now going fully virtual, almost day by day. We're getting more numbers of districts that are closing down and will be totally virtual and may not be opening back up until January. So we've tried to say to them, let's spend this semester focusing on the PD, answering all of your questions, ensuring that you're comfortable with implementing the program, establishing some of the higher ed partnerships. And then we're looking at January to be our target for them to fully roll out with their students. So we should have more data, January student data, but I can tell you for the university partnership with the college course that starts the end of January, we have 40 slots that will be filled by Ed Rising students from 3 districts.
Great. So Betty also asked about, and really it's a kind of laid out something that's really important, which is that this isn't just about recruiting kids to become teachers, in particular recruiting kids of color. There's also about retention, which is a huge issue everywhere, and ensuring that the kids that we attract into the profession stay in the profession and become teacher leaders. And we see that already kind of naturally with kids across the country who are in Ed Rising. They take on leadership roles in college. Some of them started their own nonprofits. One of them is leading, one of our former Ed Rising national officers is leading a whole Twitter chat tonight on what it means to be a gay teacher. There's just like so we're seeing a lot of that, and it's something that we always encourage and try to promote. So I'm gonna get to a couple more questions, and then I'm gonna just share a couple ending slides. One of them was, is this service free? No. But we do have a discount that we can offer you. We'll talk about that. And if you're on this call, we'll be sure to get you all the information. There's a question about whether we're connected to Common Core state standards. So we're aligned to the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. There's no Common Core standards for teacher pathway programs or for CTE for that matter, but we have made sure we're aligned to things like English language arts standards and all of that, but it's aligned to National Board. And if there's further alignment within a state that's required for purchasing requirements, we can always sort of work with you to help figure that out. We don't yet have data on the number of kids who have gone through because the first, it was a question that came up, the first group would be juniors in college now, but we do know from FEA, our previous work, that we had a 400% better return on investment than any other CTE program out there from a few years back. So and again, if you put more questions in the chat, we have it recorded. We're going to put it up there. We will get to it. Let me give everyone just kind of a quick overview. If you haven't already looked at our website. So, and this goes to one of the questions in the chat as well about working with universities. This is a comprehensive community-based initiative. It's not just about a school. It's not just about a district. It's about schools and higher ed working with state departments of education and philanthropists to come together to provide a pathway to grow and diversify the profession. There's no one way of doing it. Some states and some jurisdictions, it's the Teachers Association that's really spearheaded. Others, it's someone in the State Department. Others, it is someone in a district or an institute of higher ed. There's really no one way of doing it. What we have in our CTSO program, if you're an approved CTSO program, what we have is sort of 5 components. There's the chapters, right? You can just have an Ed Rising chapter. We have, and that's a group of kids that gets together with, you know, a mentor teacher. There's a lot of wonderful service projects and things like that. And then we have our curriculum, which is very flexible, and it's designed to be very flexible, where you can, that's where you're really teaching your kids about what it means to be a teacher. And again, that's all aligned to National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. I should also have said earlier that both the NEA and the AFT were incredibly supportive in our initial efforts to get this moving, as was the National Board, in terms of aligning our curriculum, creating micro-credentials, et cetera. There are state, regional, and national competitions, conference, which then culminates in our annual conference every year. If you want to be inspired, come to the annual conference to see 1,000, 1,200 young people who want to be teachers. It is amazing. It's my favorite time of the year. We were really bummed to have to cancel it this year. And we'll be sending out information about the 2021 conference. We already put out the call for proposals, but keep your eye out there. And then the other thing is it's about a network, right? We know that teaching is not always the first choice that parents have for their kids, right? We know that teachers get such sustenance from being part of a group of professionals that are supporting each other. We know teachers learn from each other. And we try to create that. We're trying to create that movement where people are really seeing themselves as part of this, what I would consider the most important profession in America. Daisy, who's our Ed Rising National Student Secretary, you see what she says. She's going to be working on high school ESL teacher, be a high school ESL teacher. And then you can see a picture down there of Reggie, who really spearheads a lot of our partnership work with Educators Rising. I also want to point you to our website, right, where you will find a couple things. One is we put together a blueprint last year. We pulled together expert practitioners, expert academics, policymakers, and others to help us create a blueprint, a very practical guide to growing the profession. Go on our website, educatorsrising.org. Or you can email us and we'll send it to you, and you'll see that blueprint. Download it. We have checklists in there. We have things that you can do to get moving, because again, there's no one way of doing it, right? Shwana and Sandy have done an amazing job in Connecticut, but Arkansas is different, and California is different, and Massachusetts is different, and you have to do something that works for you, and we can work with you on that. Also, and it's going to be on our website, we have a promo going on right now. If you get to us by December 7th, and you can see the contact information down there, info@edrising.org, then we will offer up to the first 20 Ed Rising student members free with a curriculum purchase, right? And we're really seeing this year as a planning year in lots of ways. So if you say, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, reach out to us, and we can kind of work with you to start doing some planning for next year, because it's such a crazy year with COVID. So this is, of course, Sandy with her beautiful kids, right? Our future generation of teachers. You know, it's great to see our kids serving our communities by aspiring to become teachers. And we're just so happy and proud and privileged to be supporting that work in Connecticut and throughout the country. So Shwana and Sandy, thank you so much. Really appreciate the work you're doing in Connecticut, but also sharing your story with everybody. Again, all the questions will be, there'll be an FAQ on the website. We'll send this out as well to everybody, so you can have the slides. You can start creating the movement and the momentum in your own community. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can, whether it's through one of the ways that you see on the bottom. People tend to direct message me on Twitter as well. Doesn't matter. We're here to help. We're a nonprofit. It's what we do. We have impact and we serve. So thank you all for participating. Again, Sandy and Shwana, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Fabulous work.
We do.
Great to see everybody. Sorry about some of the issues of some folks not able to get on, but we will send it out. And I look forward to talking to you all soon. And please have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Take care, everybody. Great seeing you.
Bye.